Chapter 1. The girl who demanded the impossibly Lycan king had faced down rogue packs, survived silver poisoning, and negotiated treaties that had prevented wars spanning centuries. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared Cale Thornwood for the sight of a 6-year-old girl, standing in the doorway of his private study, her chin lifted in defiance, her fingers curled around a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. "I need a father," she announced, her voice clear and unwavering despite the tremor in her small hands. "You're coming." Cal's pen stilled over the territorial agreement he'd been reviewing. The scent hit him a moment later, human, definitely human, but threaded through with something that made his wolf stir with unusual interest. Rain, pine, and underneath it all, the unmistakable scent of fear being strangled by sheer determination. He set down the pen with deliberate care, his ice blue eyes fixed on the child who had somehow bypassed 3 levels of pack security, 2 locked doors, and his personal guard to stand dripping rainwater onto his Persian rug. "How did you get in here?" She shifted her weight from one worn sneaker to the other, water squelching audibly. "The window. You should lock those better if you don't want visitors." "Most people," Cale said slowly, rising to his full height and watching her eyes widen slightly though. She didn't step back. "Don't climb through 3rd story. Windows? Most people don't. Need what I need." She hugged the rabbit tighter. "Miss Clara at the orphanage said you're the most powerful man in Shadow Creek. She said nobody tells, you know. So I'm not asking. I'm telling. I need a father. And you're it." Cale felt his wolf push forward, intrigued despite himself. In his 300 years, he'd seen bravery in many forms. Warriors who'd charged into hopeless battles. Mothers who'd stood between their children and certain death. But this a scrap of a human child, soaked to the bone. Demanding he upend his entire existence was something else entirely. "What's your name?" "Rosie." She paused, then added with the careful precision of someone who'd had to explain this before. "Just Rosie. They found me at St. Rose's Hospital when I was a baby. Nobody claimed me, so that's what they called me." Something twisted in Cal's chest, a sensation he hadn't felt in decades. He moved around the desk, noting how she tracked his movements with those sharp hazel eyes, ready to bolt but refusing to show it. "Rosie, I'm not sure you understand what you're asking." "I understand perfectly." Her voice cracked, just slightly, and there it was, the fear finally bleeding through. "Miss Clara says the orphanage is closing in 3 weeks. All of us are getting split up, sent to different places. I'm 6. Nobody wants to adopt 6-year-olds. They want babies. But I heard Miss Clara talking to the social worker about you." She took a breath that shuddered through her small frame. "She said you donate money. She said you're different, that you help people nobody else will help." Cal's jaw tightened. Clara Whitmore, the old woman who ran the Sacred Heart Orphanage, had been in Shadow Creek for 40 years. Long enough to know what he was, even if she'd never said it aloud. Long enough to understand that the Thornwood Pack protected this town in ways the human authorities never could. But this? Sending a child to his door? Different doesn't mean please. The word cracked through the study like thunder, and suddenly Rosie's composure shattered. Tears spilled down her cheeks, mixing with the rainwater already there. "I don't want to be alone anymore. I don't want to go somewhere far away where nobody knows my name. I don't want to be the kid nobody wanted." Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow echoed louder than a shout. "I need someone, anyone." And Miss Clara said, "She said you understand what it's like to be different, to not fit." Cale stood frozen, every instinct in his body warring with every responsibility on his shoulders. He was the Lycan king. He commanded the largest pack in the Northern Territories. His life was violence and politics and secrets that could never be shared with a human child. He had enemies who would use any perceived weakness against him. He had duties that demanded his attention every hour of every day. He had no business even considering this. But his wolf was already circling the idea, protective instincts flaring in a way they hadn't in years. And beneath that, in the part of him that was still just a man who remembered what loneliness tasted like. Something whispered, "She came to you. Out of everyone in this town, she chose you." "Rosie," he said carefully, crouching down so he was at her eye level. "Do you know what I am?" She wiped her nose on her sleeve, studying him with unnerving intensity. "Miss Clara says you're good. That's all I need to know. That's not what I asked. I know you're not normal." She shrugged, a gesture far too old for her years. "I'm not stupid. Your eyes do that thing like they're glowing sometimes when you think nobody's watching. And you move too quiet, like the wolves in the nature videos." She tilted her head. "Are you magic?" Despite everything, Cale felt his lips twitch. Something like that. "Will you hurt me?" "No." The word came out as a growl, and he saw her eyes widen, but not with fear. With something like recognition. "Then I don't care what you are." Rosie straightened her shoulders, summoning that fierce determination again. "I just need you to be my father. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to stay." The rain hammered against the windows, filling the silence that stretched between them. Cale could hear his second in command, Marcus, approaching down the hall, no doubt wondering why the security alerts had gone quiet. He could hear the steady beat of Rosie's too-fast heart, the catch in her breath as she waited for his answer. This was insanity. This was impossible. This was a 6-year-old girl who'd climbed through a window in a thunderstorm because she'd rather face the unknown than face abandonment one more time. Cale Thornwood had made many difficult decisions in his long life. He'd sacrificed friendships, denied his own desires, and carried burdens that would have broken lesser men. But looking into Rosie's hopeful, terrified eyes, he realized that no decision had ever been simpler or more complicated than this one. 3 conditions, he heard himself say, and watched hope flare like wildfire across her face. 1, you listen when I tell you something is dangerous. 2, you don't lie to me. Ever. And 3, he paused, letting her see the weight of what he was about to say. You accept that my world is strange, and there are things you'll see that you can't talk about with anyone outside this house. Can you do that? Rosie nodded so hard her damp hair flew around her face. Yes. Yes, I promise. All of it. Then Cale extended his hand, large and scarred and dangerous, toward her small one. Welcome home, Rosie. She grabbed his hand with both of hers, her grip surprisingly strong, and for the first time since she'd appeared in his doorway, she smiled a real smile that transformed her entire face. And Cale Thornwood, Lycan King and terror of the Northern Territories, felt his carefully controlled world tilt sideways into something utterly, terrifyingly new. Chapter 2. The woman who saw Timok 16 years later. Cale stood in the same study, staring out at the same view of Shadow Creek's forested mountains, and wondered when exactly his daughter had grown up enough to become his greatest vulnerability. She's asking questions again. Marcus leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed over his chest. The beta's expression was carefully neutral, but Cale could read the concern beneath it. About the monthly gatherings. About why certain townspeople look at you the way they do. I know. Cal's jaw tightened. She turned 22 last month. She's not a child anymore. Then maybe it's time to stop treating her like one. Marcus stepped into the room, his voice dropping. She's smart, Cale. She's going to figure it out eventually. And when she does, finding out you've been lying to her for 16 years? I haven't lied. You've admitted, extensively. Marcus's expression softened. She deserves the truth. Before Cale could respond, the sound of the front door slamming echoed through the house, followed by familiar footsteps quick, purposeful, angry. Both men exchanged glances. I'll leave you to it, Marcus said, making himself scarce with the practiced ease of someone who'd learned when to avoid family drama. Rosie appeared moments later, her hazel eyes flashing with frustration, her dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She'd grown into a striking young woman, strong-willed, fiercely intelligent. and currently radiating the kind of fury that reminded Kale exactly where she'd learned it. From him. "We need to talk," she announced, dropping her backpack onto the leather chair with more force than necessary. About the fact that I just got rejected from another job in town." She planted her hands on her hips. "That's 5, Dad. 5 interviews where everything was going perfectly until they asked my last name. The second I said Thornwood, their entire demeanor changed. They got scared." Cal's hands clenched behind his back. "Rosie, don't Rosie me. I'm not 6 anymore." She moved closer, her voice rising. "What are you? What are we? Because I know we're not normal. I've known that since I was a kid, but I trusted you when you said you'd explain when I was ready. Well, I'm ready. I'm more than ready. I'm tired of people in this town looking at me like I'm something dangerous. Just because I have your name." The truth sat on his tongue like silver burning, poisonous. "Necessary." But before he could speak, a scent drifted through the open window that made his wolf surge forward with immediate alarm. Blood, fear, human, and something else. Something that made every instinct in his body roar to attention. Rosie noticed his change immediately. "Dad, what's wrong? Stay here." He moved toward the door. "Like hell I will." She followed, ignoring his growl of warning. "See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You do that thing with your voice, and everyone just obeys. But they both heard it then. A woman's scream, cut short, coming from the woods beyond the estate. Kale was moving before conscious thought, his body already shifting, already preparing for violence. Behind him, he heard Rosie gasp, but he couldn't stop to shield her from this. Not now. He burst through the back door and into the tree line, following the scent with predatory precision. Rosie crashed through the underbrush behind him, refusing to be left behind, and he didn't have time to send her back. They found her in a small clearing, collapsed against a tree, her clothes torn and bloody. A woman mid-20s, auburn hair matted with leaves and dirt, her arm bent at an unnatural angle. But it was her eyes that stopped Kale cold. They were shifting, brown to amber to gold, pupils contracting and expanding as she fought against something, her entire body trembling with the effort. "No, no, no." The woman was whispering, her voice breaking. "Not now. Please, not now." Rosie rushed past Kale before he could stop her, dropping to her knees beside the injured woman. "It's okay. You're safe now. We're going to help you. Get back." The woman gasped, her eyes snapping to Rosie. "You need to, I can't control." Her words dissolved into a cry of pain as her body convulsed. "Dad." Rosie looked back at him, her face pale. "She needs a hospital." But Kale was frozen, watching the transformation attempt to take hold, watching the woman fight it with everything she had. He knew what she was. He knew what she was trying to prevent. And he knew that the moment Rosie saw it, everything would change. "Rosie, step away from her now." Something in his voice must have finally registered because Rosie hesitated, her hands hovering over the woman's shoulders. "What? No, she's hurt. She's not human." The words hung in the air like smoke. Rosie's head whipped toward him, confusion and disbelief warring across her features. "What are you talking about?" The woman let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "Smart man." Her eyes locked on Kel's, and he saw the desperation there. "Silver. Someone shot me with silver. Can't shift, can't stop it either." Kale moved then, swift and sure, dropping to his haunches beside them. His hand went to the woman's neck, finding her pulse too fast, too erratic. He could smell the silver poisoning spreading through her system, could see the way her body was trying to shift and failing, the agony of being caught between forms. "Who are you?" he demanded. "Lyra Winters." Each word seemed to cost her. "From the Silverpaw Pack, East Mountains." Her eyes rolled toward Rosie, and something like regret flickered there. "Sorry. She has to see this." "See what?" Rosie's voice had gone small, frightened in a way Kale hadn't heard since she was 6 years old. "Dad, what is she talking about?" Lyra's body convulsed again, and this time she couldn't suppress it. Her scream pierced the clearing as fur rippled across her skin, bones beginning to crack and reshape. "Dad!" Rosie scrambled backward, her eyes wide with shock and terror. Kale caught her before she could run, pulling her against his chest, forcing her to look away. "Don't watch," he said quietly, his heart breaking at the sound of her ragged breathing. "Just don't watch." But he knew it was too late. The secret he'd spent 16 years protecting had just shattered in a clearing in the woods. And nothing would ever be the same. Behind them, Lyra's transformation completed with a sound that was more pain than triumph. And when Kale dared to look, a silver gray wolf lay panting in the dirt, blood matting her fur, her amber eyes fixed on him with a plea he couldn't ignore. "Help me, Dot," and caught between them his duty to this wounded shifter and his daughter's fractured world. Kale Thornwood realized that the impossible choice he'd made 16 years ago was about to demand a price he wasn't sure any of them could pay. Chapter 3. The truth that changes everything. Guest room had become a makeshift infirmary. Lyra lay unconscious on the bed, her human form restored, but her breathing shallow and labored. Marcus worked methodically to extract the silver fragments from her wounds, while Kale stood guard by the window, hyper-aware of his daughter's presence in the hallway. She hadn't run. That was something. She hadn't spoken either. That was worse. "The silver's deep," Marcus muttered, dropping another fragment into a glass dish with a soft clink. Whoever shot her knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't a warning. This was an execution attempt. From her own pack, Kel's voice was granite, or someone who wanted it to look that way. Marcus glanced toward the door. "You should talk to her. Rosie, before this festers." Kel's jaw clenched. "I know. But knowing and doing were different beasts entirely. How did you explain to your daughter that the father she'd known for 16 years was actually an immortal predator? That the bedtime stories about wolves in the woods weren't stories at all? That every instinct telling her to run was probably correct?" A soft knock interrupted his spiral. Rosie's voice came through the door, steady despite the tremor underneath. "Can I come in?" Marcus looked at Kale, who nodded once. The beta opened the door and slipped out, leaving father and daughter alone with an unconscious shifter between them. Rosie stepped inside slowly, her eyes moving from Lyra to Kale and back again. She'd changed clothes, pulled her hair down, the familiar motions of normalcy in a world that had just tilted sideways. Her arms were wrapped around herself, defensive, protective. "Is she going to die?" Rosie asked quietly. "No." Kale kept his voice level. "The silver is out. She'll heal." "How fast?" The question was sharper than he expected. Rosie had always been perceptive, but now he could see her mind working, cataloging details, building a framework for this new reality, faster than a human, within days instead of weeks. Rosie nodded slowly, then moved closer to the bed, studying Lyra's face. The other woman looked younger in sleep, vulnerable in a way that made Kel's protective instincts flare not just for her, but for what her presence represented. "She's beautiful," Rosie said softly. Then, without looking at him, "Are you one too?" What did she call herself? Shifter, Lycan, werewolf. Kale let each word settle between them. "Yes." "How long?" "I was born this way, 342 years ago." Her breath caught audibly. She finally turned to face him, and the hurt in her eyes was a physical blow. "You've been lying to me my entire life." "I've been protecting you. From what?" "The truth." Her voice rose, anger bleeding through the shock. "From knowing what my own father is. God, Dad, I spent years thinking I was crazy, thinking I was seeing things that couldn't be real. And all this time, you just let me doubt myself. I let you have a childhood." Kale moved toward her, slowly, as if approaching a spooked animal. I let you grow up without the weight of this world on your shoulders. Without the danger. Don't. She held up a hand, stopping him. Don't act like this was some noble sacrifice. You kept this from me because you didn't trust me. That's not true. Then why? Why tell me now? Or did you even plan to tell me? Would I have gone my whole life not knowing if she, Rosie gestured to Lyra, hadn't literally transformed in front of me? The accusation hung between them, heavy with 16 years of carefully constructed omissions. Cale wanted to deny it, but the truth was more complicated than he could explain in this moment. I was afraid, he admitted, the words foreign on his tongue, of losing you, of you looking at me the way you're looking at me right now. Rosie's expression cracked, just slightly. How am I looking at you? Like I'm a stranger. Silence stretched between them, broken only by Lyra's soft breathing. Rosie wrapped her arms tighter round herself, and Cale could see her processing, reorganizing every memory, every strange moment through this new lens. The monthly gatherings. She said finally, "Those aren't business meetings, are they?" "No, they're pack meetings." Pack. She tested the word. "How many? In Shadow Creek?" 43. "In my territory?" Over 300. Her eyes widened. Territory. You're not just. You're in charge. That's why people are afraid. Not of what you are, but of who you are. I'm the Lycan King of the Northern Territories. He let her see the full weight of it, the burden he'd carried alone. I've held this position for over 2 centuries. I protect these lands and everyone in them, human and shifter alike. And me? Her voice dropped to a whisper. What am I in all of this? Am I even really your daughter? Or was that just a convenient cover? The question hit harder than any silver bullet. Cale crossed the distance between them into strides, his hands coming to rest on her shoulders. She stiffened but didn't pull away. You listen to me, Rosie Thornwood. You are my daughter. Adoption papers, blood, biology, none of that matters. You climbed through my window 16 years ago and demanded I be your father. And that's exactly what I became. That hasn't changed. That will never change. Tears spilled down her cheeks, the first real emotion breaking through the shock. I don't know how to process this. I don't know how to. Her breath hitched. What does this mean for me? Can I? You're human, Cale said gently, understanding the question she couldn't quite ask. Completely human. Being raised by shifters doesn't change that. But living in your world does. She looked past him to Lyra. She was running from something. Someone hurt her. Is that what your life is? Constant danger? Sometimes. And you brought me into it anyway. I gave you a choice to leave it every single day. His hands tightened on her shoulders. I made sure you had skills, education, opportunities beyond Shadow Creek. If you'd wanted to walk away, go to college somewhere far from here, I would have let you go. Would you? The question was barely audible. Behind them, Lyra stirred, a soft moan escaping her lips. Both Cale and Rosie turned toward her, watching as amber eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. Where? Lyra's voice was rough, dried blood cracking at the corner of her mouth. Safe, Cale said, moving to the bedside. You're in my home. The silver is out. Lyra's gaze sharpened, traveling from Cale to Rosie and back again. Recognition flickered across her face. You're Thornwood, the king. Then her eyes went wide with panic. No, I have to warn. She tried to sit up and immediately collapsed back with a cry of pain. Cale caught her shoulders, easing her down. Don't move. You're still healing. You don't understand. Lyra's hand shot out, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. They're coming. My pack, they didn't do this to exile me. They did it because I found out what they're planning. Her eyes locked on his, desperate and urgent. They're coming for you, Thornwood, and they're bringing an army. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Cale felt his wolf surge forward, protective instincts flaring. Who's coming? The Silverpaw Pack. But they're not alone anymore. They've made alliances. Dark ones. Lyra's grip tightened. I tried to stop them, tried to get evidence, but they caught me, shot me, and left me to die in your territory so it would look like you'd started a war. Rosie's sharp intake of breath drew both their attention. She was staring at Lyra with a mixture of horror and fascination, her earlier anger temporarily forgotten in the face of this new threat. How long? Cale demanded. Days. Maybe less. Lyra's eyes drifted closed, exhaustion pulling her under. They want your territory. But more than that, they want your blood. Chapter 4. When World's Calliteracy couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw at the moment Lyra's bones had cracked and reformed, fur rippling across skin. Human becoming wolf in a transformation that defied everything she thought she knew about the world. She sat curled in the window seat of her bedroom, watching dawn break over Shadow Creek's forests, and tried to reconcile the father she'd known with the ancient predator he'd revealed himself to be. 342 years old, a king, a creature from myths and legends. And yet, when he'd gripped her shoulders and called her his daughter, she'd heard the same fierce protectiveness that had been there when she was 6 years old, and afraid of thunderstorms. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "It's me," came Lyra's voice, rough but stronger than it had been hours ago. "Can I come in?" Rosie hesitated, then crossed to open the door. Lyra stood in the hallway wearing borrowed clothes, one of Rosie's own oversized sweaters, and soft pants. The wounded shifter looked almost normal now. If you didn't notice the fading bruises that should have taken weeks to heal, or the way she moved with the predator's grace even while injured. "I couldn't sleep either," Lyra said, offering a small, tired smile. "Thought maybe you'd want company, or to ask questions, or to tell me to leave you alone." All valid options. Despite everything, Rosie felt her lips twitch. "Come in." They settled on opposite ends of the window seat, and careful distance between them. Morning light caught the auburn highlights in Lyra's hair, made her amber eyes seem to glow from within. She was probably 25, maybe 26, with the kind of ethereal beauty that made Rosie suddenly conscious of her own tangled hair and rumpled pajamas. "You're handling this better than most humans would," Lyra observed, tucking her legs beneath her. "Am I?" Rosie laughed without humor. "Because I feel like I'm falling apart. You're sitting here talking to me instead of running for the hills. Trust me, that's progress." Lyra's expression softened. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be the one who shattered your world. It was already cracking." Rosie pulled her knees to her chest. "I've known something was wrong for years. I just didn't want to push too hard and lose." She trailed off, not sure how to finish. "Your father," Lyra supplied gently. "That's not how pack bonds work, or family bonds for that matter. He wouldn't abandon you over questions. But he'd lie to me for 16 years to avoid them." "He'd protect you for 16 years, Lyra corrected. "There's a difference. Our world, the shifter world, it's dangerous, Rosie. Full of politics and violence and ancient grudges. Cale gave you something precious, a childhood free from all of that. That's not cruelty. That's love." Rosie studied the other woman, seeing the shadows behind her eyes. "Is that why you ran?" "Your pack's violence." Lyra's jaw tightened. "I didn't run. I was trying to stop them." She looked out the window, her voice dropping. "The Silverpaw pack used to be honorable. My father led with wisdom, believed in coexistence between shifters and humans. But he died 3 years ago, and my brother took over. Garrett is different, ambitious, ruthless. Your brother tried to kill you?" "Not directly. He had his second in command do it." Lyra's fingers traced the fading scar on her forearm. "I found documents, communications with other packs. They're forming a coalition. They want to overthrow Cale and claim the Northern Territories, and they're willing to start a war to do it." Rosie felt cold despite the sweater she wore. "Why? Power. Resources? Territory." Lyra met her eyes. "Your father controls the largest, most prosperous region in North America. Other packs are jealous. They think because Kel's been peaceful for decades that he's grown soft. They're wrong. You sound like you admire him. I respect him, Lyra corrected. The Thornwood Pack is legendary among shifters. Kel's reign brought stability to territories that had been at war for centuries. He's fair, honorable, and terrifying when crossed. That's why my brother's alliance is so dangerous. They're not attacking out of strength, but out of desperation. They know if they wait much longer, they'll never have the courage to try. Rosie absorbed this, her mind racing. And you? What happens to you now? I'm a traitor to my own pack. I can't go back. Lyra's voice was matter of fact, but Rosie heard the pain underneath. If Cale grants me sanctuary, I become Thornwood Pack. If he doesn't, I'm a rogue, and rogues don't last long in this world. He'll help you, Rosie said with more certainty than she felt. He helps people. That's what he does. Lyra's smile was gentle, knowing. You really love him, don't you? Even now, after everything, the question hit something vulnerable in Rosie's chest. Could she still love someone who'd hidden so much? But even as she asked herself, she knew the answer. Because beneath the shock and hurt and confusion, there was something deeper. 16 years of being chosen, protected, cherished by a man who'd had no obligation to keep her. Yes, she whispered. I do. Then you should tell him that. Lyra shifted, wincing slightly. Because trust me, Rosie, in the fight that's coming, we'll all need to know where we stand with each other. Before Rosie could respond, a howl split the morning air. Long, mournful, and close. Too close. Both women froze. Lyra was on her feet instantly, her body tensed, eyes already shifting amber. That's not Thornwood Pack. How do you know? Different pitch, different cadence. Every pack has their own. Another hell joined the first, then another, harmonizing into something that made Rosie's skin crawl. Oh no. What? They're already here. Lyra moved to the window, scanning the tree line. The Silverpaw Pack. They must have followed my scent. Rosie's heart hammered. But you said we had days. I was wrong. Lyra's voice was tight with fear and fury. Garrett must have moved faster than I thought. He wants to catch Cale off guard before reinforcements can arrive. The bedroom door burst open. Cale stood there, already partially shifted, his eyes glowing ice blue, his canines elongated, his entire presence radiating lethal intent. Rosie, basement. Now. Dad, now. The command was pure alpha, and Rosie felt it in her bones despite being human. But she didn't move, because as she looked between her father and the wounded shifter, who'd brought death to their doorstep, she realized something fundamental had shifted inside her. She wasn't a child anymore. She wasn't some fragile human who needed to be locked away while the monsters fought. She was Rosie Thornwood, and if her father had taught her anything in 16 years, it was that Thornwoods didn't run to know. She said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I'm not hiding. Not anymore. This is my home too, my family. Whatever's coming, I face it with you. Cal's expression flickered surprise, pride, fear, all warring across his features. Another howl echoed, closer now, and Rosie saw the moment he made his choice. Then stay behind me. He growled. And Lyra, can you fight? The wounded shifter straightened, amber eyes blazing. Just give me a target. As they moved toward the stairs, Rosie caught her father's hand. He looked down at her, and for just a moment, she saw past the ancient predator to the man who'd once crouched down to her eye level and promised to stay. We'll talk later, she said quietly, about everything. But Dad, I'm not going anywhere. His grip tightened on her hand, warm and solid and real. Neither am I, little wolf. The endearment was new, unexpected, and somehow perfect. As they descended into the chaos waiting below, Rosie felt something settle in her chest, not acceptance, not yet, but the beginning of understanding. Her world had changed, but maybe she was ready to change with it. Chapter 5. Blood and belongings, main hall of the Thornwood estate had transformed into a war room. Marcus stood by the windows with 3 other shifters Rosie recognized from town: the librarian, the mechanic, and surprisingly, her old high school guidance counselor. All of them looked different now, their human masks slipping to reveal the predators beneath. 12 hostiles on the north perimeter, Marcus reported, his eyes tracking movement through the glass. Another 8 circling east. They're testing our defenses. Garrett's being cautious, Lyra said, moving to stand beside him despite her injuries. He knows he's on Thornwood territory. He'll wait for a massive gray wolf exploded through the window in a shower of glass. It landed in a crouch, lips pulled back in a snarl, before shifting mid-lunge into a mantle, broad-shouldered, with Lyra's same auburn hair and amber eyes twisted with rage. "Hello, sister," Garrett snarled. "You've been busy." Cale was between him and Rosie before she could blink, a low growl rumbling through his chest that made the air vibrate. "You attack my home uninvited, Silverpaw. State your business or leave in pieces." Garrett's smile was all teeth. "My business is the traitor hiding behind your hospitality." His eyes found Lyra, and something vicious flickered there. She stole Pack's secrets, betrayed her own blood. Shifter law demands she face justice. Shifter law, Cale said coldly, demands a trial before the Council of Elders, not an execution in the woods. She forfeited that right when she ran. She came to me for sanctuary. Cal's voice dropped to something subterranean, ancient, which means she's under my protection now. "You want her. You go through me." The temperature in the room plummeted. Rosie felt the weight of Cal's power pressing down like a physical force. The other Thornwood shifters stood straighter, their own wolves responding to their alpha's dominance. Even Garrett took a half step back before catching himself. "You'd risk war over one rogue?" Garrett demanded. "I'd risk war over a principal." Cale moved forward, predatory and controlled. "You brought violence to my territory, shot a woman and left her to die. And now you have the audacity to demand I hand her over?" His eyes flashed pure white. "Get out." For a moment, Rosie thought Garrett might attack. His body tensed, muscles coiling, and she saw his pack members through the broken window preparing to surge forward. But then his gaze slid past Cale, landing on her with unsettling intensity. "So it's true," he said softly. "The mighty Lycan King has a human daughter." How unexpected. Every shifter in the room went still. Rosie felt Cal's fury like heat against her skin, but she stepped forward before he could speak, tired of being treated like fragile porcelain. "I'm Rosie Thornwood," she said clearly, "and you're bleeding on our carpet." Garrett looked down at the glass cuts on his arms, then back at her with something like amusement. "Brave little thing, aren't you? Or just stupid? Brave enough to stand here, smart enough to know you're outnumbered." She gestured to the Thornwood shifters surrounding them. "This is our home. You're the intruder." Rosie, Cale warned, but she heard approval underneath the caution. Garrett studied her for a long moment, then shifted his attention to Lyra. "Last chance, sister. Come home. Face the pack. I'll show mercy." "Your mercy comes with teeth," Lyra said quietly, moving to stand beside Rosie, a gesture that wasn't lost on anyone. "I know what I found, Garrett. Documents linking you to the Black Moon Syndicate. Plans to attack human settlements to force Thornwood into war. You're not just ambitious anymore. You've gone dark." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Garrett's expression flickered just for a second before smoothing back into cold amusement. "Careful, Lyra. Accusing an alpha of such things without proof is dangerous." "I have proof. I sent copies to the council before you tried to kill me." Rosie saw it, then the flash of real fear in Garrett's eyes before rage consumed it. "You didn't." "I did." Lyra's voice was steady, but Rosie noticed her hands trembling. "They are called a tribunal within the week. Everything you've done, every alliance you've made, every human life you've endangered, it'll all come to light." Garrett's laugh was brittle, desperate. Then I have nothing to lose, do I? He moved with supernatural speed, claws extending, aiming not for Lyra, but for Rosie the vulnerable human, the easy target, the leverage. But Lyra was faster, throwing herself into his path with a cry that was half rage, half pain as his claws tore across her barely healed ribs. The room erupted. Kel's roar shook the rafters as he caught Garrett by the throat and threw him through another window. Marcus and the others surged forward, engaging the Silverpaw wolves that poured through the opening. The sound of snarls and breaking furniture filled the air as the carefully controlled confrontation dissolved into chaos. Rosie dropped to her knees beside Lyra, pressing her hands against the bleeding wounds. No, why did you do that? Told you, Lyra gasped, blood flecking her lips. We need to know where we stand with each other. Her amber eyes locked on Rosie's. You're packed now, even if you're human. That means something. You barely know me. Rosie's vision blurred with tears as blood seeped between her fingers. Doesn't matter. You're his. That makes you worth protecting. Lyra's hand came up to cover Rosie's, surprisingly strong. Besides, I like you. Would have been nice to be friends. You're not dying, Rosie said fiercely. You hear me? You just saved my life, and I'm not letting you die before I get to return the favor. Marcus appeared beside them, his hands already assessing the damage. Get her to the medical room. Now. Rosie helped him lift Lyra, the other woman's weight surprisingly light, her breathing becoming more labored as they moved through the chaos of fighting shifters. Rosie caught glimpses of her father, a massive black wolf now, larger than any of the others, moving with lethal precision as he drove Garrett's pack back through the broken windows. He was magnificent, terrifying, everything she'd feared and everything she'd somehow always known he could be. The medical room was in the east wing, away from the fighting. They laid Lyra on the table, and Marcus began working with the efficiency of someone who'd patched up wounded shifters before. Rosie stood back, her hands covered in blood, her entire body shaking with adrenaline. Talk to her, Marcus said without looking up. Keep her conscious. Shifters heal faster when they have something to focus on besides the pain. Rosie moved to Lyra's head, brushing auburn hair back from her face. The other woman's eyes were closed, her breathing shallow. Hey, Rosie said softly. Remember what you said about being friends. I'm holding you to that. So you need to stay with me, okay? Lyra's eyes fluttered open, unfocused but present. Bossy, for a human. I learned from the best. Rosie managed a shaky smile. My dad's kind of intense, in case you hadn't noticed. Noticed. Lyra's lips twitched. He's going to destroy Garrett. For this. Good. The vehemence in her own voice surprised Rosie. He tried to kill you. Twice. For trying to save you. Lyra's hand found Rosie's. Worth it. The simple statement cracked something open in Rosie's chest. Here was a woman she'd known for less than a day, who'd thrown herself between Rosie and death without hesitation, who'd called her pack despite being human, who'd offered friendship in the middle of chaos. Why? Rosie whispered. Why would you do that for me? Lyra's smile was soft, genuine. Because you're worth saving. And because I've been alone for so long. Nice to have someone to protect again. Reminds me, I'm still good for something. You're good for a lot of things, Rosie said fiercely, squeezing her hand. And you're not alone anymore. Neither of us are. Outside, a victorious howl split the air deep, powerful, unmistakably Kale. The fighting sounds faded, replaced by retreating footsteps and wounded whimpers. They'd won. For now. Chapter 6. The spaces between Wurg's sun had fully risen by the time Marcus declared Lyra stable. The wounds were already beginning to close. The shifter's supernatural healing finally kicking in now that the immediate trauma had passed. Rosie sat in the corner of the medical room, her hands cleaned but still trembling, watching Lyra sleep. She didn't hear Kale enter. He moved too quietly for that, but she felt him. The shift in the air, the familiar presence that had been a constant in her life for 16 years. When she looked up, he was human again, wearing fresh clothes, his hair damp from a quick shower. But his eyes still held that otherworldly glow, the wolf not quite settled beneath his skin. "How is she?" His voice was rough, strained from the shift and the violence. "Marcus says she'll be okay. A few more hours, and the wounds should be mostly healed." Rosie stood, suddenly exhausted. "Garrett, gone? He won't be back." Kel's jaw tightened. "But the council will have to deal with him now." Lyra's evidence changes everything. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid pressing between them. Finally, Kale gestured toward the door. "Walk with me." Rosie followed him through the damaged estate, past broken windows and overturned furniture, out onto the back terrace that overlooked the forest. The morning was crisp and clear, birds singing as if the world hadn't just tilted on its axis. "I'm sorry," Kale said quietly, staring out at the trees. "For all of it. For the secrets, for the danger, for—" "She called me Pack." Rosie interrupted, her voice soft. "Lyra, she said I was Pack, even though I'm human. That I was worth protecting because I'm yours." Kale turned to face her, something raw in his expression. "You are both of those things. But what does that mean?" Rosie wrapped her arms around herself. "I'm not a shifter. I can't do what you do, be what you are. How can I be Pack when I'm just human, just human?" Cal's laugh was surprised, almost bitter. "Rosie, you stood between me and an alpha wolf this morning. You demanded to fight alongside us. You held Lyra together while she bled out, keeping her conscious, giving her a reason to hold on." He moved closer, his hand coming to rest on her shoulder. "Being Pack isn't about what you can shift into. It's about loyalty, trust, being willing to stand when everything in you says to run. You've been Pack since the day you climbed through my window." Tears pricked Rosie's eyes. "I was so angry at you. Part of me still is, I know. But watching you fight, seeing what you're willing to do to protect the people you love," she met his eyes. "I get it now. Why you kept it secret. Not just to protect me from knowing, but to protect me from being a target. Every shifter with a grudge against me now knows I have a human daughter," Kale said, his voice heavy. "Garrett made sure of that. It changes things, Rosie. Makes you vulnerable in ways I can't always defend against. Then teach me." The words came out fierce, certain. "Teach me how to defend myself. How to survive in your world. Because I'm not leaving, Dad. I'm not going to hide or run or pretend I don't know what you are. This is my life to now. My choice." Kale studied her for a long moment, and Rosie saw the war playing across his face, the desire to keep her safe warring, with respect for her autonomy, the fear of losing her battling with pride in who she'd become. "It won't be easy," he warned. "Nothing worth having ever is." She managed a small smile. "You taught me that." His hand moved from her shoulder to cup her face, gentle despite the strength in those fingers. "When did you grow up?" "Probably around the time my father turned out to be an immortal wolf king." The joke was weak, but it made him smile, really smile, and something eased in Rosie's chest. "He's still just your father," Kale said softly. "The wolf, the king, all of that, it's what I am. But who I am, that's the man who makes terrible pancakes on Sunday mornings and can't figure out how to use the new coffee maker and still checks your room at night. To make sure you're home safe, you check my room every night for 16 years. The admission cracked something open in Rosie's heart. All the anger, all the hurt, all the confusion, it didn't disappear. But it settled into something she could carry, something that didn't feel quite so heavy. "I love you," she said, the words simple but true. "Even when I'm furious at you, even when I don't understand. I love you, Dad." Kale pulled her into a hug, and Rosie pressed her face against his chest. breathing in the familiar scent of pine and something wild she'd never been able to place before. His wolf, she realized now. She'd been smelling his wolf her entire life without knowing it. I love you too, little wolf. His voice was thick with emotion. More than territory, more than pack, more than this long life I've lived. You're the best thing I ever chose. They stood like that for a long moment, father and daughter, human and shifter. Both of them changed by the last 24 hours in ways they were only beginning to understand. A soft cough made them pull apart. Lyra stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame, looking pale but determined. Sorry to interrupt, but Marcus said I should move around to help the healing. Her amber eyes were warm as they looked between them. Also, I got tired of being alone. Rosie moved to her side immediately, offering support. You should be resting. I've been resting. Now I need air. Lyra let Rosie guide her to one of the terrace chairs. Besides, I wanted to thank you. Both of you. For what? Kale asked, his posture still protective, but his tone gentler than it had been. For not turning me away. For fighting for me when my own blood wanted me dead. Lyra's voice wavered. For making me feel like maybe I could belong somewhere again. You do belong here, Rosie said before Kale could speak. If you want to stay, you're part of this now. Part of us. She felt Kel's gaze on her, felt his surprise. But when she looked at him, he nodded slowly. Rosie's right. You risked your life to save hers. That makes you family. If you'll have us. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. I'm a Silverpaw. Inviting me into your pack could cause complications with the council, with other territories. Let me worry about politics, Kale said firmly. The question is, do you want to be Thornwood Pack? Lyra looked at Rosie, then at Kale, and something fierce and grateful and almost disbelieving crossed her face. Yes. God, yes. I've been running for so long. I forgot what it felt like to want to stay somewhere. Then it settled. Kel's tone was final, official. I'll make it formal before the pack tonight. You'll need to complete the bonding ritual. But wait, Rosie interrupted. Bonding ritual? Kel's lips twitched. Nothing dramatic. The pack gathers. You pledge loyalty to the Alpha. The Alpha accepts you. There's a ceremony. Some traditional words. Usually followed by a celebration. So, a party? Rosie couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. Shifters like any excuse to drink and eat too much, Lyra said, a hint of her earlier humor returning. The bonding ritual is just an excuse to make it official. Rosie looked between them. These two people who'd been strangers yesterday and now felt like the beginning of something she couldn't quite name. Family, yes. But also something more. Something that felt like finally finding where she was supposed to be all along. Then I guess we're having a party, she said. And for the first time since the world had turned upside down, she felt herself really smile. Fair warning. I have no idea how shifter parties work. Stick close to me, Lyra said, reaching out to squeeze Rosie's hand. I'll teach you everything you need to know. And in that moment, standing on the terrace with her father on one side and her unexpected new friend on the other, Rosie felt something slot into place. She'd spent 22 years not quite fitting into the human world, always sensing she was meant for something more. Maybe this was it. Maybe she'd been meant for this pack, this family, this strange and dangerous and beautiful world all along. Chapter 7. The ritual of becoming clearing behind the Thornwood estate had been transformed. Torches lined the perimeter, their flames dancing against the encroaching dusk. Members of the Pack 43 strong formed a circle round a central fire pit, their eyes reflecting the firelight with an amber glow that marked them as other. Rosie stood at the edge of the gathering, her heart hammering as she took in the scene. She'd changed into simple clothes at Lyra's suggestion, jeans and a soft sweater. Nothing formal. The ritual honors what you are, Lyra had explained while helping her braid her hair. Pretending to be something else would be an insult. Now, watching the pack assemble with their preternatural grace, Rosie wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. These weren't the humans she'd grown up alongside in Shadow Creek. These were predators, ancient and powerful, and she was about to witness one of their most sacred ceremonies. "You okay?" Lyra appeared beside her, looking healthier than she had any right to after being clawed open 12 hours ago. She wore a simple white dress that marked her as the one being welcomed. "Terrified," Rosie admitted. "You? Terrified?" Lyra echoed with a small smile. "But also hopeful. I haven't felt that in a long time." Cale emerged from the house, and the pack immediately quieted. He'd changed to wearing dark clothes that seemed to absorb the firelight, his presence commanding without effort. This was the Lycan King, Rosie realized, not her father. Not the man who made terrible pancakes, but the alpha who'd ruled for centuries. He moved to the center of the circle, his voice carrying across the clearing with supernatural clarity. "We gather under the full moon to witness a bonding. Lyra Winters of the Silverpaw Pack seeks sanctuary and membership among us. She comes not from strength, but from courage. Not from birthright, but from choice." The pack responded in unison, their voices harmonizing in a way that raised the hair on Rosie's arms. "We hear the alpha. We honor the tradition." Cal's eyes found Lyra. "Come forward, Lyra Winters. Speak your truth before the pack." Lyra took a deep breath, then stepped into the circle. The firelight caught her auburn hair, made her amber eyes glow. She looked ethereal, otherworldly, and utterly vulnerable. "I come before Thornwood Pack in shame and in hope," she began, her voice steady despite the tremor Rosie could see in her hands. "I was born Silverpaw, raised to honor Pack above all. But my alpha betrayed those values. He conspired with dark forces, planned to spill innocent blood, and when I tried to stop him, he ordered my death." A murmur rippled through the pack. Rosie saw anger on some faces, sympathy on others. "I ran to Cale Thornwood not because I was weak, but because I knew he was strong. Strong enough to stand against corruption. Strong enough to protect what's right." Lyra's voice grew firmer. "I have no pack, no family, no home, but I have loyalty and I have truth, and I offer both to Thornwood Pack if you'll have me." Cale moved closer, his expression unreadable. "The pack bonds through blood and through choice. You've already bled for us for my daughter. That speaks to your character. But bonding requires more. It requires trust that you'll put this pack above your own interests, that you'll fight for us as you fought against your brother. Can you give us that?" "I can," Lyra said without hesitation. "I will." "Then kneel." Lyra sank to her knees before him, her head bowed. The gesture was one of submission, but also respect. Rosie found herself holding her breath as Cale placed his hand on Lyra's head, his claws extending slightly, not threatening, but ceremonial. "I am Cale Thornwood, Lycan King and Alpha of this territory. I accept your pledge, Lyra Winters. From this moment, you are Lyra Thornwood. You are Pack. You are family, and anyone who harms you answers to me." The words resonated with power, with magic, with something ancient that made the air shimmer. Rosie felt it wash over her, a warmth, a recognition, a sense of rightness that defied explanation. Lyra's head came up, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." Cale helped her to her feet, then turned to address the pack. "Lyra Thornwood is Pack now. Let anyone who questions this speak now or accept it forever." Silence greeted his challenge. Then, one by one, pack members began to step forward, touching Lyra's shoulder, offering quiet words of welcome, accepting her as one of their own. Rosie watched the transformation on Lyra's face, saw the lonely woman who'd stumbled into their lives begin to believe she might actually belong. When the last pack member had welcomed her, Lyra's eyes found Rosie's across the circle. The look on her face was pure gratitude, pure joy, and Rosie felt answering warmth bloom in her chest. Now, Cale announced, his voice lighter, "We celebrate. Marcus, if the pack doesn't have food and drink in the next 5 minutes, I'm demoting you." Laughter rippled through the gathering as the formal atmosphere dissolved into something warmer, more relaxed. Pack members began moving toward tables laden with food, their earlier solemnity replaced by genuine celebration. Rosie started forward, intending to congratulate Lyra, but stopped when she noticed a figure standing apart from the celebration. A woman, perhaps in her 30s, with silver blonde hair and eyes that seemed to see too much. She was watching Lyra with an intensity that made Rosie's instincts prickle. "That's Vera," Marcus said quietly, appearing at Rosie's elbow. "She's our pack seer. Has visions sometimes, usually about things we'd rather not know." "Why is she staring at Lyra like that?" Marcus's expression grew troubled. "Because she sees something. And knowing Vera, it's not good." Before Rosie could ask more, Vera's gaze shifted, locking directly onto her with an intensity that stopped Rosie's breath. The seer's lips moved, forming words Rosie couldn't hear across the distance. But the message was clear in her eyes. Warning, and something else. Recognition. Then Vera turned and disappeared into the shadows beyond the firelight, leaving Rosie with a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. "What was that about?" Rosie demanded. Marcus shook his head. "With Vera, it could be anything. Or nothing. She doesn't always share what she sees." He paused, then added carefully, "But she's never wrong." Rosie wanted to press further, but Lyra appeared then, her face flushed with happiness and maybe a little wine. "There you are. Come on. You need to meet everyone properly. As the Alpha's daughter, you're kind of a big deal." "I'm really not. You really are," Lyra insisted, linking her arm through Rosie's. "Trust me. I've spent 3 hours listening to pack members talk about you. You're kind of legendary, the human girl who climbed through a window and demanded a king become her father. They love that story." Despite her unease about Vera, Rosie felt herself smile. "That's embarrassing. That's pack history now. You're stuck with it." Lyra guided her toward the celebration, but not before Rosie caught her father's eye across the clearing. He was watching them with an expression she'd never seen before. Contentment, maybe, or peace. For a man who'd lived 300 years, who'd seen and done things Rosie couldn't imagine, he looked almost happy. But there was concern there too. His gaze flickered toward where Vera had disappeared, and Rosie knew he'd seen the exchange. Knew something had passed between the seer and his daughter that would need addressing. Later. That look said, "Later we'll deal with whatever's coming." For now, though, Rosie let herself be pulled into the celebration. Let herself be introduced to pack members who treated her with a mixture of curiosity and respect. Let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she could build a life in this world that was half magic, half danger, and entirely unlike anything she'd ever imagined. She didn't see the figure watching from the tree line, didn't notice the amber eyes tracking her every movement, calculating, assessing, didn't know that Garrett Silverpaw hadn't retreated as far as everyone assumed, and didn't realize that the bonding ceremony meant to bring Lyra into the pack had also painted a target on Rosie's back that would change everything. Chapter 8. What the seer Sorcy found Vera 2 hours into the celebration, standing at the edge of the forest where moonlight filtered through the canopy. The seer didn't turn when Rosie approached, but she spoke as if she'd been expecting her. "You want to know what I saw." It wasn't a question. Rosie moved to stand beside her, following Vera's gaze into the darkness between the trees. "Everyone keeps saying you're never wrong, that your visions always come true." They do. Vera's voice was soft, almost melodic. But understanding them is the trick. The future isn't fixed, it's fluid, shaped by choices not yet made. I see possibilities, probabilities. What might be if the path continues unchanged? What did you see when you looked at Lyra? Vera finally turned, her silver gray eyes assessing Rosie with an intensity that felt like being read. "I saw her standing between 2 worlds. Light and shadow, life and death. She's balanced on a nice edge, and the slightest push could send her either way. Rosie's chest tightened. Is she in danger? We're all in danger. That's what it means to be alive. Vera tilted her head, studying Rosie like a puzzle. But you didn't come here just to ask about her. You came because you want to know what I saw when I looked at you. Yes. Brave girl. Something like approval flickered across Vera's face. Most people avoid me when they sense I've seen their future. They'd rather not know. I'd rather be prepared. Vera was quiet for a long moment, weighing something. Finally, she spoke. I saw you standing in a circle of wolves, some protecting you, some hunting you. I saw blood not yours, but blood you'll be responsible for nonetheless. I saw a choice that will define not just your life, but the lives of everyone in this pack. She paused, and I saw love, the kind that transforms, the kind that costs everything and gives even more. Rosie's breath caught. What does that mean? It means your path is tied to theirs now. Vera gestured toward the celebration, where Lyra was laughing with Marcus, where Kale watched over his pack with protective vigilance. Lyra came here seeking sanctuary, but she brought something with her. A catalyst. Her brother won't stop until he has what he wants, whether that's her death or yours. I can't tell yet. Mine? The word came out smaller than Rosie intended. Why would he want me dead? Because you're human and beloved by the Lycan King. Because your existence proves that power doesn't require transformation. Because Vera hesitated, and for the first time, Rosie saw something like uncertainty in her eyes. Because there's something in you that calls to our kind. Something I don't fully understand yet. A chill raced down Rosie's spine. I'm just human. Are you? Vera's question hung in the air like smoke. Tell me, Rosie, have you never wondered why a 6-year-old child could find her way through a shifter's? Security? Why predators who should terrify you feel like home? Why you can sense pack bonds you shouldn't be able to perceive? Rosie opened her mouth to argue, but the words died. Because Vera was right. She had always wondered, had always felt like there was something just beneath her skin. Something she couldn't name or touch or understand. What am I? She whispered. That, Vera said gently, is the question you need to answer. Before Garrett does. Before Rosie could press further, Lyra's voice called out from behind them. There you are. I've been looking everywhere. She stopped short, seeing Vera, and something complicated passed over her face. Am I interrupting? No, Vera said, stepping back. I've said what needed saying. She looked between them, and a sad smile touched her lips. Take care of each other. You're going to need each other more than you know. Then she was gone, disappearing into the forest with the eerie silence of someone who'd learned to move between worlds. Lyra moved closer, wrapping her arms around herself. Vera's visions can be intense. Are you okay? I don't know. Rosie turned to face her new packmate. This woman who'd become impossibly important in less than 2 days. She said there's something in me that calls to shifters. That I might not be entirely human. Lyra's expression shifted surprise, then consideration. You know, when Garrett grabbed for you during the attack, I felt it. This overwhelming need to protect you. I thought it was just because you'd been kind to me, because you were Kel's daughter. But it was stronger than that. More primal. What does that mean? I don't know. But Lyra moved closer, her voice dropping. There are legends, old stories about humans who carry dormant shifter blood. It can skip generations, hide for centuries. Most of the time, it never manifests. But sometimes, under the right circumstances, with the right trigger, I could become like you. The possibility was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. Maybe. Or maybe you're something else entirely. There are other supernatural bloodlines seers like Vera, witches, Phi-touched humans. Lyra reached out, taking Rosie's hand. The point is, you're not just some random human who stumbled into our world. You were meant to be here. Vera sees that. I feel it. And I think Kel's known it all along. Rosie thought about her father's immediate acceptance 16 years ago. The way he'd never seemed surprised by anything she did. as if he'd been expecting her to be extraordinary. He knew, or suspected. Lyra squeezed her hand. You should talk to him. Really talk. No more secrets, remember? No more secrets, Rosie agreed, but her mind was racing. If she wasn't entirely human, what did that mean? Could she learn to shift? To access whatever power might be sleeping in her blood? And more importantly, did she want to? A commotion from the celebration made them both turn. Marcus was striding toward them, his expression grim. We have a problem. The perimeter guards found signs of intruders. Recent. Someone's been watching the estate. Lyra's face went pale. Garrett. We don't know that yet, Marcus said, but his tone suggested otherwise. Cale wants everyone inside. Now. They moved quickly back toward the house, the celebration dissolving as pack members responded to the unspoken threat. Rosie found her father at the center of the organized chaos, directing wolves to patrol routes with military precision. Dad, inside. Rosie. You and Lyra both. His eyes were already shifting, the wolf rising to meet the danger. Marcus, take them to the safe room. I'm not hiding, Rosie protested, but Cale caught her arm. You are this time. His voice was hard, commanding, because Vera came to me 10 minutes ago and told me what she saw. Told me that Garrett's not just coming for Lyra anymore. His ice blue eyes locked on hers. And she saw fear there, raw and real. He's coming for you. And he's bringing something that even I might not be able to stop. The words hit like a physical blow. What do you mean? The Black Moon Syndicate deals in dark magic, blood rituals, curses. Kel's hand tightened on her arm. If they've given Garrett something to use against us, against you specifically, he didn't finish. But he didn't need to. Rosie understood. Whatever was coming, it was worse than a pack war. It was something older, darker, more dangerous than anything they'd faced. Then we need to know what I am, Rosie said, her voice steady despite her thundering heart. Vera said there's something in me, something that might help. Kel's expression shuddered. Rosie, no more secrets, Dad. That's what we promised. She pulled free of his grip, standing tall. If I'm going to be a target, I deserve to know why. I deserve to know what I am. For a long moment, father and daughter stared at each other, the weight of 16 years of careful omissions pressing between them. Finally, Kel's shoulders sagged, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. You're right. You deserve the truth. He glanced at Lyra, who nodded encouragement, then back to Rosie. Your mother, your biological mother, she wasn't entirely human either. The world tilted. What? I didn't know her well. She left you at the hospital and disappeared. But I had her sent, and years later, I tracked it to a name, a bloodline. Kel's eyes held hers. Your mother was descended from an ancient line of moon-blessed humans, people who could communicate with shifters, who sometimes bore children with latent abilities. You're not just human, Rosie. You're a moonchild. And if Garrett knows that he'll try to use me, Rosie finished, the pieces falling into place. Against you. Against the pack. Yes. Lyra stepped forward, her voice fierce. Then we don't let him. We figure out what Rosie can do. We prepare. And we end this. Rosie looked between them, her father, ancient and powerful and terrified for her, and her new sister, determined and loyal despite her own trauma. She thought about Vera's vision of wolves circling her, of blood and choices and transformative love. Okay, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. Then let's figure out what I am, before Garrett does it for us. Chapter 9, Awakening the Moonchild Training Room in the estate's basement, had been cleared of everything except candles and a circle of salt. Vera stood at the center, her silver hair gleaming in the flickering light, while Cale paced the perimeter like a caged animal. Lyra sat cross-legged near the door, her amber eyes tracking every movement. This is insane, Cale muttered for the third time. We don't know what will happen. What if it's too much? What if... What if we do nothing and Garrett uses her ignorance against her? Vera's voice was patient but firm. Would you rather she discover her abilities in the middle of a battle? With no control? Kel's jaw clenched, but he stopped pacing. His eyes found Rosie, standing at the edge of the circle. And she saw the war raging behind them, the need to protect versus the need to prepare. I can do this, Rosie said quietly. I want to do this. You don't know what you're asking. Cale moved closer, his voice dropping. Opening yourself to that power, it changes you. There's no going back once you cross that line. I crossed the line the moment I chose to stay. Rosie reached out, touching his arm. This is just finishing what I started. Lyra spoke from her corner, her voice gentle. Cale, she needs this, and she needs to know you trust her to handle it. The words seemed to crack something in him. He looked at Lyra, then back to Rosie, and slowly nodded. All right. But if anything feels wrong, anything at all, we stop immediately. Agreed, Vera said, gesturing for Rosie to step into the circle. Come, Moonchild. Let's see what you've been hiding. Rosie entered the salt circle, her heart racing. The air inside felt different, charged, expectant. Vera moved around her, lighting candles at specific points, murmuring words in a language Rosie didn't recognize. Moon children are bridges, Vera explained as she worked. Between human and shifter, between earth and sky, between what is and what could be. Your mother's bloodline carried the ability to communicate with our kind on a level deeper than words, to sense pact bonds, to feel the moon's pull, to sometimes even influence a shift. Wait, I could make someone shift. Rosie's eyes widened. Theoretically, though that level of power is rare, even among moon children. Vera completed the circle, then stood before Rosie. What we're doing tonight is simpler. We're going to help you sense the bonds that already exist. Feel the pact connections around you. Once you can perceive them, you can learn to navigate them. Cale moved closer to the circle's edge, his presence both comforting and distracting. Will it hurt? No, Vera assured him. It might be overwhelming, but not painful. Rosie, I need you to close your eyes and breathe. Focus on the people in this room. Don't think about what you see, think about what you feel. Rosie obeyed, letting her eyes drift shut. At first, there was only darkness and the sound of her own breathing. But then, slowly, she began to sense something else. Warmth coming from multiple directions. Not physical heat, but something deeper. Energy. Presence. Good, Vera murmured. Now reach for it. Don't force it, just invite it in. Rosie extended her awareness, tentative and uncertain. The warmth grew stronger, and suddenly she could feel them. Kayla, massive presence, ancient and powerful, anchored by something fierce and protective. Lyra newer, but no less real. A bright thread of loyalty and gratitude and something else. Hope, maybe, or belonging. And Vera silvered and strange, her presence fractured into dozens of possible futures, all existing at once. Oh, Rosie breathed, tears pricking her eyes. I can feel you, all of you. The pack bonds, Vera confirmed. You're sensing what connects us, what makes us family beyond blood. It's beautiful, Rosie whispered. But then she felt something else. Another presence, distant but growing closer. Cold where the others were warm, hungry where they were content, and threaded through with malice. Her eyes snapped open. There's something out there. Something wrong. Cale was moving before she finished speaking, his body already shifting toward the threat. But Vera caught his arm. Wait. Let her track it. She needs to understand what she's sensing. Like hell, Cale. Lyra stood, moving to his side. Trust her. Trust the process. Rosie closed her eyes again, following that cold thread. It was moving through the forest, circling the estate with predatory patience. Not alone, there were others with it. But this one was different, stronger, more focused, and it was looking for her. Garrett, she said, certain. He's out there. With others. They're surrounding the house. How many? Marcus's voice came from the doorway. When had he arrived? Rosie reached further, counting the cold presences. 8, maybe 9. And something else. Something that feels wrong. Like it doesn't belong in this world. Vera's breath caught. Dark magic. They've brought a practitioner. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Kel's eyes blazed pure white. Everyone to defensive positions. Now. But before anyone could move, Rosie felt it, a surge of foreign power reaching for her through the bonds. She'd just learned to sense. It felt like hooks in her chest, trying to pull her toward that cold presence outside. She gasped, staggering. Immediately, Lyra was there, catching her. Rosie, what's happening? He's trying to. Rosie couldn't explain it. The pull was getting stronger, overwhelming her newly awakened senses. She could feel Garrett's intention now, clear as words. He wanted her outside, wanted her vulnerable, wanted to use whatever she was against her father. Break the circle. Cale roared at Vera. Cut the connection. It's not the circle, Vera said, her voice tight with concern. It's her. She's too open right now, too receptive. The dark magic is using her own abilities against her. Rosie fell to her knees, Lyra still holding her. The pull was agonizing now, like being torn into directions. Part of her wanted to run outside, to surrender to whatever was calling. The other part screamed to stay, to fight, to a Rosie. Look at me. Lyra's voice cut through the chaos. The younger woman knelt in front of her, gripping her face with both hands. Look at me. Focus on my voice. Rosie forced her eyes open, meeting amber that seemed to glow with their own light. You're not alone in this, Lyra said fiercely. You feel those bonds, right? Use them. Don't just sense us hold onto us. Let us anchor you. I don't know how. Yes, you do. You've been doing it your whole life. Lyra's grip tightened. Every time you chose to stay with Cale instead of running. Every time you trusted despite being afraid. That's what Pack is. That's what these bonds mean. So hold on. Hold on to us. Rosie closed her eyes again. But this time, instead of reaching outward, she reached for the warmth she'd felt before. Kel's fierce protection. Lyra's bright loyalty. Even Vera's strange, fractured presence and Marcus's steady strength from the doorway. She pulled them close, wrapped them around herself like armor. And slowly, the cold pull began to weaken. That's it? Vera breathed. She's learning. Fighting back. Is she going to be okay? Cale demanded, still at the circle's edge, his body vibrating with the need to intervene. More than okay, Vera said, and there was wonder in her voice. She's stronger than her mother was, stronger than any moonchild I've encountered. The dark magic can't hold her because her bonds are too strong. The pull snapped suddenly, leaving Rosie gasping. She sagged against Lyra, who held her tight, one hand stroking her hair. You did it. You're okay. You're safe. He wanted to control me, Rosie panted. Use me like a weapon. But he couldn't. Lyra pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. Because you're not alone. You have Pack. You have us. Cale finally broke, crossing into the circle and pulling both women into his arms. Never again. We never try that again until she's ready. She is ready, Vera corrected gently. She just proved it. The dark magic failed because her bonds are genuine, earned, chosen. That's more powerful than any spell Garrett can buy. From outside, a howl split the night rage and frustration given voice. Then silence. The cold presences Rosie had sensed began to retreat, pulling back into the forest. They're leaving. Marcus reported from his position by the window. Whatever they tried, it didn't work. Rosie stayed pressed between her father and Lyra, feeling their warmth, their strength, their unwavering presence. She'd survived. More than that, she'd fought back. And in doing so, she'd learned something crucial. She wasn't just Kel's daughter anymore. She wasn't just Lyra's friend. She was Pack. Moonchild. Bridge between worlds. And Garrett Silverpaw had just learned that she couldn't be taken, only chosen, and she'd already made her choice.